Hello and welcome to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Ocran, welcoming you on behalf of the team Springboard led by Comfort. This is your most inspirational show and the platform where the greatest minds in the world converge. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse Just Be, the Enterprise Group Enterprise Your Advantage, UMB Bank celebrating 50 years in banking, and Central University, Ghana's premier private Christian university. Our media partners are the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Business. So today we get into the engine room with somebody I've known for 1979, a friend, a brother, and somebody I deeply appreciate and respect. Many of you know him as the immediate past CEO of Multi-Choice Ghana, but he's the president of GIBA, the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, and even more importantly, he's the CEO of TNC Farms. We'll find out life as a farmer, one of my favorite vocations, and the transition between careers and the learnings on the road. So, Sunkwa-Mills, welcome to Springboard.
Thank you, Albert.
In preparing for this, I tried to capture your various experiences on Springboard, and my favorite one, guess what, was in Bolga.
Yeah.
When we went to Bolga on the road show, you spoke at the Fountain Gate Chapel several years ago. Do you remember that experience?
I do.
Yeah. It's amazing how you meet people several years after and they tell you how the little you shared impacted their lives.
I think I did speak of something. Did I touch on farming?
I had to go back to the tape because Matthew will dig it up. He does well with that and find out what he spoke about. But have you always wanted to be a farmer?
I think it might have started when I was a child because my father was an agriculturist. Actually, he was a director for animal husbandry. Now they call it animal production department for the Ministry of Agriculture. And he founded a lot of base things for animal production in Ghana then. And so when I was young, he took me most of the time to these projects. Some are the Amahia Dairy Farm, the number of sheep stations, some in Pong Tamale, some in Kintampo, and stuff in piggeries and stuff like that. So I like animals anyway for starters, but this actually gave me a bit more of an understanding of what it meant, And the base was they were trying to have the core production for Ghana, including things like Pumaze hatchery, so that Ghana could have a base where for animal meat production we had our own sources that we could carry up the country in terms of meat production. So this was my introduction that brought me in. And then he also went into farming, which I took over. Yeah.
I never heard this part of the story. So what you're saying is that the socialization started with your dad.
Yes, it did.
What he did working at the ministry, and then what he subsequently did going into farming.
Yeah.
So you watched, you admired it, you took interest in animals until you told us one day you will go into it.
Yeah, even though I was young, he actually took a lot of time to explain why they were doing this and what the outlook was. The lines you use to breed bulls and why you have challenges that come across and why you don't eat your bull that you're using to cross other cows so you increase milk production on meat. He actually explained those to me at a very early age. So it did make, and I found it interesting.
Did you develop the interest in the poultry bit or just animal husbandry as a whole?
We didn't have cattle at home. We had sheep at home. We had poultry at home very early. And it was when I say it was my job, I mean, when I was at home, nobody had to ask me about taking care of them. I did, so I understood some of the things hands-on. And then later on, he went into actual farming. So, yeah.
Tell me how this shaped your outlook on life.
So you have things that you're passionate about, that you like, and then you have things that by education and expectation that you have gone to school that they also would want you to be. But usually, so you end up following the educational path. Besides all that, my father had wanted me to be a doctor, to read medicine, and so they had been drumming that gently across. So I was comfortable with science. I was comfortable, I would say, with maths. So I carried on through that, through secondary school in Fansum, where I think I met you.
Mm-hmm. No, you think that's what you meant. And we'll talk about that on another program.
Yes. And so I did that. I read science, and I did biology and everything. After writing my A-levels, I did not make the grades for med school. So my father said, "Oh, I'll try and better my grades." And interestingly, yes, I wrote the papers again, and I got the same marks. So I went on to do zoology in that. But my father was still hopeful that, I could still branch off into medicine. But at that time, I guess the faith was not too strong, because I actually I really did not look forward to doing medicine. I was more of an outdoor person. And the other thing I found was that along the way that I was quite commercial. And the commercial part of it also started as part of the outcome of farming. When my parents started, they started doing poultry, and we used to sell eggs. And I was very much involved in the sale of products. My mother sold a couple of other things, from our garage where we lived. It was a government place. There was cooking oil, there was frozen fish and all that. And I used to, that. But when I went to university, I got a lot more commercial. The objective then was, I had wanted to be able to make money so that I became independent very early. That was the objective.
Why?
Why? Because, so I take back to family. We're 4 siblings, right? And there are 3 girls, and then I was the boy at the end. They call it only boy. And I somehow detested it when it comes to say, "Oh, you are the only boy." Means like life is set for you, that. And I did not enjoy that. It's like, oh, you can be weak, you can just be there and you're sorted, And when you got into trouble, somebody says, "Oh, he's doing that because he's the only boy, he's spoiled." And it used to really get to me. So I said, how do I solve this? And something in my head said, well, when you're dependent, you don't have to depend on what your parents, because everybody thinks your parents are going to leave whatever they have for you. So if you have your own, then people realize that, okay, he stood on his own, so he's not spoiled and all that. So that was the objective, that, I would be able to stand on my own and not necessarily depend on what my parents have.
So what did you sell on campus, or what did you make money from?
Campus was a number of things. I remember I was an agent for Fun Ice. I used to sell ice cream most of the time, but I had a boy. So when I went off for lectures, we had an ice chest. I used the JCR common room, cold room. So when Fun Ice got the products, keep it there, and he sold it in a nice chest. At that time, the Fun Ice bicycles they'd gone out of vogue, and then so they were not really available in Legon. So in Legon Hall, lunchtime, he's there with that, and then we start. And then we also found out that a lot of people needed to rent equipment, audio equipment, like amplifiers, speakers. At that time, we used cassette players, and that. So we between me and my roommates, we invested in those kind of equipment, and we used to rent it. We also used to show videos at those times. And there was no DSTV, there was no Netflix and all that stuff. So
I'm just trying to build a thread between the young or the little boy whose father introduces him to agric, then the commercial interest formed by helping your mother sell cooking oil and other things from the home, and then the fierce business ethic formed out of a desire to be independent, and then an interest in broadcasting, entertainment, etc., formed out of renting. Have you ever sat down to build a thread through all your experiences?
yeah,
They all came together
so,
as you grew up.
I know that besides the interest that was developed from the farming side and all that and commercial, one of the passions that I had actually was music. I listened to a lot of music, and that, in fact, at a point, I even thought I would be a DJ.
Really?
Life happens, because I thought I was doing good. I knew music through younger days, and through secondary school, I was an ardent follower of current pop music, etc. And I even joined the band when I went into Form 1, and my father stopped me. And the interesting thing was that he actually introduced me to piano, which even deepened my understanding of music. But then when I got to school, he says, you're there to learn, you're not there to play music. So I couldn't become a band boy.
That's a shame.
Well, there's still time. I will get permission probably from my wife, and I could be a band boy again.
You see,
if it's not too late.
No, there is not. Would you think that there are turning points in your life that you see, this, you look back at and you say, of all the moments in my life, this was one, somebody you met, something you did, something you didn't do, something that you encountered, something you heard that really shaped your life, or you call it a turning point?
Yeah, number of things. My father passed quite shortly after he came on retirement. And he had plans to expand the farm. He had gotten a job, FAO. And then suddenly he fell ill. So apparently he had a progressive disease, and we didn't know about it. So shortly he didn't even make 62. And he passed, yes. I think I was 26 when he passed, and I was the only, at that time, I was the only child here with my mother. But I had to grow up overnight. I remember I'd come out from university. I was still doing a few commercial things. I was teaching. I was a teaching assistant here and there. I was making a bit of money teaching in homes, etc. All that. And suddenly everything was dependent on Cecil, what do you think about this? And so I couldn't make any funny or silly decisions anymore. I had to grow up. I had to make sure that what I said and what I suggested made sense. So it made me grow up very quickly. So I had to take up a lot of responsibilities quite early. That for both the home and that. I think not too long after that also, I decided to settle.
That increased the responsibility.
Yeah, because I was dating, and we've been dating for a bit, and I thought the back and forth, and then when I looked at my my future plans, etc., one of the calculations was that I also needed to settle in terms of family and start. And I think that came from my father. He had a conversation with me, and he says, men don't have too much of a time clock. I don't know why he had that conversation. He says, as a man, you try and have your first child by 28, 30. So then by the time you're retiring, if things do not go well, because nothing is set in life, somebody says security can be an illusion. You're not secure. At least your children would have crossed a certain line.
What's a big influence on you?
Yes, he was.
I can see from your eyes.
He was. My mother was also a big influence, more in the area of discipline. And my mother was known, they called her teacher among all her brothers and the family and all that. But she was a head teacher. She was an educationist, actually.
That's something we have in common.
Sorry?
That's something we have in common.
Yeah. And she was, though she was super loving, I mean, she kept things as they were and was quite blunt about what is truth and what is right.
So putting this all together, so you met Janet and got married. How long have you been married?
There I go again doing a calculation. I think 26 years. She does a calculation better. Yeah.
She's giving me the number. It's slightly different from yours. I'll tell you at the end of the show.
I made the confession
before you mention the number.
Because you know that it's one thing that I accept, that when it comes to counting the years, the women are super. We always have to start doing landmarks, and sometimes we don't hit it right, but they remember everything in detail. So that, but I met her. We went out for quite a while before we got married, about 10 years.
Janet is a very, 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 very popular here at Springboard. She's family here at Springboard, and we're just excited about what we do together. And for the two of you working in different spheres, you come across as being almost opposites. Everybody knows Janet as outgoing, that person out there, and they tend to see you as reserved and quiet, even though I would not think so. But would that be the balance?
That is right. That
right.
is right. Yeah, people usually usually it's based on perception. Yeah, I look reserved. Of course, I'm reserved. See me as a gentleman, yes. But you wonder how, in some of the things I have done in career, when the results turn out and people I work with, and they will tell you the real person that I am. Definitely, I'm not a brash person, but I know how to reach deep into people with the profile. I'm easily approachable, which is based on your intent. I'm easily approachable because if you find out, how I am. Yeah.
Let's move on to your time as CEO of MultiChoice. How many years do you do in MultiChoice?
So MultiChoice, the last stretch was 15 years, but before then I had done almost another 5 years. So it was a total of almost 20 years. So I joined MultiChoice from the Ghana Red Cross.
I remember the Red Cross days.
Yes, right. It was another pivot in my life where I also grew up a lot in terms of. That's where I learned how to use computers quite well. I learned a lot about this country, and quite a learner how to administer loans and stuff. So it was quite a good learning point. But then I was also doing commercial because I was raising money for them, and I went to MultiChoice. I got them to sponsor a program. And in the third sponsorship, they actually poached me as a sales and marketing manager. So that's how I entered MultiChoice. I didn't last too long in that position. I stayed there for 2 months, and then I transitioned to become the operations and customer service manager after 2 months. And so I stayed in that position for almost 4 years. And then I got an offer from SGSSB.
Oh, great.
Then I stayed in SGSSB. I did a bit of, I entered SGSSB and I set up the service quality department based on my background from MultiChoice in terms of service and operations, customer service and operations. So we set up a service quality. Basically, we're supposed to fix the service there. I think we had fixed it in almost a year and a half. We rewrote all the procedures for them, and then we introduced a new system of delivering service.
You must have been there with George Mapozu, George Anda.
George Anda, yes.
Yeah.
George Anda was in cards. So we worked together before he left for Guinness. George Ampoma was in cards. There were quite a number of people.
Katas in Katanga.
cards.
Card as in cards. Okay.
At that time it was Sika card, and then they had started working on transitioning to Visa.
Okay.
But eventually that was put under my desk. So I launched the Visa card program for SGSSB across the country. Then we have 36 branches, yeah.
Right. So you returned to...
And then, yes, MultiChoice came back after year 5. At that time, I think I'd been head of retail banking, and then I was head of product and new product and marketing and stuff, and cards. And then they came back and they had a position for business development in West Africa. So there was a gentleman I'd worked with before, Matthew Higgins. So he came and he gave me an offer. So I went back. So I worked in a couple of countries.
It was an offer you couldn't refuse.
Yeah. I guess the transition then was banking, the money was good at the time, but it was hectic. Okay. There was one thing that I mean, much as I worked, I tried to also look at the impact of stress because on your health. I think that is coming from the back foot of my father, where he had worked he had had all this career, and then at the end of coming out of it, you find out that you've had a disease, a stress-related disease that takes you away, and so I had that in mind because I had also a bit of that. So I said, well, let me have something that is less stressful, gives you good money. Why not? And it gave me the opportunity to also work in a couple of countries in Western Central Africa. And then I also learned how to speak a bit of French because there were some Francophone countries. Most of the French is gone now.
And she's still there?
My wife took it away from me.
She does it. She does well there.
Yeah.
So you came back to MultiChoice, went through a number of African countries.
Yes, so I did 5 years, and then there was an opening in Ghana for the managing director, and so they asked me to actually come and act, and then they regularized the position, and I stayed in that position for 10 years.
How was it?
It was interesting, very interesting.
Tell me about, so much happened during your tenure.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in the dynamic of it because I'm going to contrast that with working as CEO of a farm. So help me to appreciate the kinds of demands it made on you. Maybe let me take a break. And when I come back from the break, I'll be trying to find out, now that you were CEO, how different was that from all the other roles that you played, the innovations that happened during your tenure as CEO, and then contrast that with farming, which is really where my interest is today. So let me give you a break to catch your breath. When we come back, let's break it down a bit further. This is Springboard, your virtual university. My guest, Cecil Sunkwa-Mills. He runs TNC Farms. He hasn't taken me there yet, but I hope to visit the place before the year ends to see his Christmas chickens. And I'm trying to unpack the story of his life in the engine room and find out the foundations, the learnings, the philosophy of life, the corporate journey, and the transition into farming. When I come back from the break, let's break it down the more. Please don't go away.
There once was a man who had it all. He had skill, he had charisma. He was loved by all, but above all, he knew the importance of helping others, lifting others up. He knew the importance of giving other people an advantage so that they too would use that advantage to help others. All you need is that advantage that sets you apart from the rest. And when you discover that advantage, life's challenges don't seem so daunting anymore. That's where we come in. Enterprise, your advantage.
Apply now for a degree in environmental engineering, fashion design, landscape design, interior design, business administration, economics, law, nursing, civil engineering, architecture, computer science, IT, theology, PharmD, and many others at Central University, Ghana's leading private Christian university. Admissions are open for the 2021-2022 academic year. Degrees are available on our campuses at Mutual, Christ Temple Abosokai, and Kumasi. You can also enroll in our MBA with various specializations. Scholarships are available for needy but brilliant students. Call now on 0303 318 583 or 0302 396 189 and speak with an admissions counselor. You can also visit our website at central.edu.gh for more info. Central University, raising transformational leaders through faith, integrity, and excellence.
Welcome back to Springboard Virtual University and into the engine room with my friend and brother Cecil Sunkwa-Mills, helping us to appreciate the journey of his life. Brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse, the Enterprise Group, UMB Bank, and Central University, with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Business. If you just joined us, Cecil has been trying to track the framework of his life, if I may use that word, my own choice of words, and how that has been formed by different experiences, even from his childhood, that left imprints that seem to now be all coming together. We'll find out as we go along how all these came together. But we got to the point where you were CEO or managing director of MultiChoice. Help us to appreciate the kind of demand it plays on you and how much fun it was rolling out one intervention after another and seeing people consume these interventions across the nation and beyond.
Basically, you're supposed to, as CEO, I'm supposed to use content and make sure that we have the best preferred content to generate revenue for the company, to make the company profitable through the sale of content. That's a simple outlook of it. But what it meant is that you're going to look at subscriber growth. You're going to look at how you develop your people, and you've got to make sure that the platforms work. It's convenient for people to access your products. So your sales, marketing, and operations and your customer experience should be excellent. So it's a whole combination. But besides the commercial side of it, you also have the regulatory side to manage. You've got to make sure that your business is compliant in all areas, be it tax, communication, regulations, etc. And it should be appealing also to people, and you must also have a foot in the place where you do CSR, you know. So you've got to tap all these while you do the commerce, you do the regulatory and the CSR. You've got to bring it all together to give an image of the company and ensure that it grows in all these areas. So there were interesting times. We've been through Doomsaw at a time when we had actually SuperSport had acquired the local league, you know, and then we end up with the power situation where, you know, it impacts your growth and all that. So there have been quite difficult experiences like that. But above all, I mean, from where we took the company in when I joined, and in 10 years, you know, the numbers were marvelous. I mean, they were good. One of the things about content was that there was a trend we saw changing on the preference of content. Everybody would say, oh, DSTV, soccer, top of mind. For me, that's an easy sell. But remember that soccer, it's only some hours on weekends. And then unless it's Champions League, etc., you get a few interspersed. What else do people watch? There's lots of people who don't follow soccer. What else are they watching? So you're looking at movies, you're looking at how people appreciate if you have repeats, etc. But with time, what we realized was that there's actually an appeal for local content which was growing. In fact, it's always been there, but we had to look at it when it came to movies. If you take when Black Stars play, that's local content because it is linked to our culture and we feel a sense of belonging. Okay, you get a lot more eyeballs. And you find things to do with Ghana, so we picked it up. That was when Africa Magic also broke out and they started putting a lot of Nigerian content on and it drew a lot of eyeballs. So one of my missions was how to put Ghana on that map, okay? By creating an opportunity for Ghanaian content meant we could actually increase subscriber viewership. We could also, in the back, create opportunities for the creative industry at the same time. So it brings jobs and they keep producing a lot of content, etc. We also did some stuff in Boston. So we put all this together and the company grew. We grew from a small office in Ridge, on the Nima Highway, Salem Down. Yeah, that's when, from there, that's when we moved. I was then in operations. We moved to airport, stayed in airport, and then we built our magnificent office in Abelimpe.
So the office was built in your tenure as managing director. Would that be one of your most iconic achievements?
It is one, but I think for me the most iconic one was the introduction of Aquaba Magic, which is a Ghanaian content channel. I think now there are 2 of those channels. It has provided a platform for the best of Ghanaian content. We've had the best of people in the creative industry all having something to do with that platform, and it's created after a long time. Okay, it's created a continuous flow of content for DSTV to show to its subscribers, and also it's created continuous permanent jobs for so many people in the creative industry.
It's interesting that your next transition puts you in the position where you're responsible not just for one TV network, but overseeing the Ghana Independent Broadcasting Association.
Yeah.
That is an amalgamation of these TV networks and by extension creating jobs for people in the creative industry. Do you feel a sense of responsibility for the industry?
It's a huge responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. It is not a noisy position. GIBA basically is, we do advocacy. We have over 350 members, radio and TV stations in Ghana, and these are private radio and TV stations. It was formed out of the need to have a consolidated point of communication for private broadcasting in Ghana, because we had the public, which was GBC, and then with the private stations after the evolution of Radio I, etc., and the private stations bloom, it was important to consolidate, because the media, being the fourth estate, can tend to become a target based on what situation and who is in power. So there was a need to have this united front to advocate and communicate things that would protect the rights given by the Constitution to the media, in a way. So that's how GIBA was formed. So it is a mouthpiece, a very powerful mouthpiece for the stations. We make sure that they are protected and our broadcast and media landscape survives and are also compliant.
Is it compulsory for all media houses to be on?
No,
or are there ones that voluntarily decide not to sign up?
Yeah, it is like any other association where you can choose to be part of it or not be part of it. Fortunately enough, not just locally but internationally, we also recognize as a very strong stakeholder. And we have quite some recognizable and important landmark legal wins for the media industry in this country.
Just before we go to agric, why should any media house listening sign up to GIBA?
Well, for most of them, it is because, one, we focus on capacity building, but two, we take a lot of time to understand, especially the legal implications of broadcasting. So when people enter the industry, they may run into issues, be it regulatory, etc. And we are able to explain, and also we put some proactive countermeasures to guide people. For example, you must make sure they pay taxation if they're having challenges. We help them to do that. Licensing issues, when there are defaults, the processes to go through, etc. That's the job that we do. So it's besides benefiting on capacity building, when there are also some financial opportunities that come our way, we do share them with these stations. But also, we advocate and to determine the path of policy decisions which have to do with the industry. So, for example, we're looking at a draft broadcasting bill for the industry. We have quite a significant input in there. As we speak. Yeah.
Let's go to my favorite of it all, the agricultural bit. So, based on your exposure in your youth to or your childhood to agric, you must have retained in your mind the feeling that one day I'll go into it. What triggered this final move to TNC Farms?
It's just been lying and waiting. And I'll say that when I was with Red Cross, we actually ran a loan scheme for specific women. We call them women's clubs. And most of their products, their projects were agricultural projects, be it in palm and all kinds of stuff, cassava. It's also still agric. But that gave me a different in-depth education in terms of the other key things around agriculture, which makes it sustainable, because we're giving the women loans and they had to use the loans for specific things which would be able to pay back, be able to also let them achieve their goals, that they don't even, in most of the cases, they didn't even need refinancing. After one shot, they were comfortable. So it also gave me the project management aspect of agriculture. So it had been there, and I think I had done 10 years. In my mindset, I had a target that I was not looking at retiring on the job, you know. And they'll tell you one thing, sometimes you also need to listen. As you get older, you don't have to wait to get to retirement and then you start stuff. You should start that when you're able to get around. You still have people in your network in active places. And that's when you get your own thing propped up, you know, and that. So I thought after 10 years it was adequate. You know, I mean, I'm sure I had given my best to MultiChoice. A lot of landmarks had been left, you know, and that. So I could move on with somebody else. But at that time, one of the things I had in mind was to do that. There were a few other family projects like my mother's school, etc., which also needed my attention, you know. But I thought it was time to take a break, slow down a bit, and then refocus on this.
So you now consult for MultiChoice?
I do.
Sharing the experience gained after years of go
Yeah.
and move across country
exactly.
and then run all these innovations.
Exactly.
Let's take with our Greek. So what has fascinated you the most as an agribusiness entrepreneur? What has caught your attention the most?
Yeah. When I came back in, it is agri is profitable. It's not easy, but it is profitable. It is a lot more scientific. So coming back into it, and I'm still learning each day. I'm reading and reading and reading and finding out the best way to keep my costs low and maintain a margin. But at the end of it, your retail price should also be market accessible. Okay. The other thing is your product should be quality. And so I've done a year plus now. I've learned quite a lot, and the plan was to scale up further. The scaling has slowed down in the last few months because, for me, I want to see a bit of stabilization in prices. We're still running business, but the scaling would mean that you need to inject, because of the forex rates, the number of inputs that are still import dependent. So what it means is that you probably have to reinvest a lot more money.
For somebody who doesn't know TNC Farms, what aspect of agriculture do you?
We do poultry.
Poultry, okay.
Poultry, yes.
So, and you're saying that the inputs are import dependent. Yesterday I was listening to somebody talk about the various inputs in the industry and how the dollar shiftings, I wanted to use another word now, use the shiftings, directly impacted that sector. Educate us a bit on that.
Yeah, so it starts with the day-old chicks. If you look at the number of active hatcheries in this country, the one that would usually come to mind is Darko Farms, and they're not producing enough. Sometimes we have, and then the timings of some of it. We also try some from outside. We get day-old chicks coming from Holland and Belgium a lot. The companies that actually bring them in, and then that. And if you look at it, the output of these birds, the mortality rates, etc., is quite good. So most farmers tend to rely on these imported day-old chicks. That brings into mind. Remember, I mentioned Pomaze.
Yeah.
And would say it is not a problem of the farmers, but to have a hatchery, that's when we need to make sure that we have policies that can support hatcheries. Because for hatcheries, you need to have parent stock. Chickens that are grown, you keep them for 2-3 years. They lay eggs, that you take the eggs and you hatch and you sell to farmers to produce layers of that. So that's parent stock. So those are the things that the projects I spoke about, like Pomaze, etc., they need to have and sustain, and they need to do that. But that's not a cheap thing to do. You've got to make sure that feeding and things happen. But now you look at it for day-old chicks, we have a huge gap there. So we're depending on day-old chicks that are coming in.
The demand outstripping the supply for day-old chicks?
Depending, right now it's because of the price, but yes, definitely locally we don't get enough at all. We need layers, we need broilers, we need even turkeys. We even bring in guinea fowls from Belgium.
You're serious?
Yes. Bringing guinea fowls from
And turkeys too?
Yes.
I was listening recently to a dialogue on the way forward for Ghana, especially as the conversation gears towards going to IMF for support. And I recall one of the speakers categorically saying, listen, this is all about food security. When all is said and done, if we can get our food right. It's something that we believe here at Springboard 100%. But I like the way that speaker particularly said it. One of our friends here at Springboard, Atuaful, he simply said, listen, food security is a lever. Simple. Get it right, we are on point. Do you share that view?
120%.
Oh, so you are above the 100 that we are at.
Yeah. And actually, it's one of the reasons why you go into food. I mean, there are different stages of making food available. Production, distribution, processing, further processing, and the guys at the very end where you get your takeaways. Okay. So I've seen beautiful policy documents. Okay, it's all been written nicely. But when for it to be actualized, one of the things we talk about frozen chicken. What makes frozen chicken beat local chicken? The word is there, frozen. We've not seen any real policy support. We hear about fisheries that they build at the fishing harbor and they build cold rooms and that. There's some parts of what we call, they'll say free market, etc. But when you want your economy or you want a particular industry to get to a point, you may not necessarily just leave it completely to a free market. You must keep close to it and make sure that it is guided. That's why government will find people and they want to build fishing harbors, etc. In the same way, you can produce chicken. The chicken will be ready for table in 6 weeks. Within 6 weeks, it will not have consumed too much feed. But how do you stop that chicken from continuing to consume your money? Remember, when they eat feed, it's your money. So when you look at places like Brazil and the Americas and all that they package the chicken and even with that they have grades, and of course they take the A grades and B grades and they send to, but it's fine. But when they stop the chicken from eating, what do? They dress it, they process it, and then what do? They package and freeze it. So you build a stock of chicken. It's like what buffer stock is doing. They're storing grain. We're not storing meat. We leave the farmer has to run around with live chicken in his farm looking for market or putting a cage by the roadside till somebody buys. But each day the chicken eats. So how is it going to be profitable? So it is written, yes, it's in policy documents, etc. But we need to build that facility. For example, if it comes to chicken, this is just one example. That we breed the chicken, we buy them at a certain age, and we freeze and pack them. The portioning can always come, it's the same thing. When it ties, there's that freeze package in quantities and keep them there. One of the things that I went around, I have my small freezing facility, and there's a lot more investment to be done. One of the things is that even with the freezing, the type of packaging that is used, it looks like I've been searching and it looks like the best price. I need to go to China. The few people who have it here, what it means, they're taking a lot of money for it. But there's a type of packaging which is good for meat, for food packaging, food freezing, and at the same time, it's like a shrimp pack, and it allows the food to stay frozen and still be fresh for 12 to 18 months.
Let me end this by asking about the people that are most passionate about those in the bracket of 15 to 35, young people stepping out on their career journey. So I'll tell you what, several years ago, it was not hip to be an entrepreneur. It was not even hip to come out of school and say, I'm going into business. It sounded almost like, did you not get a job? I mean, but through mindset change and showcasing what is possible, today somebody can come out of any of our universities and proudly put their hand on their chest and say, I'm going into my own business. And we celebrate them here every day. What would it take to create an even bigger core? We have quite a number of them, young people in agribusiness doing fantastic stuff. But what will it take to create a country in which every young person's first career choice is to be in agribusiness? What will it take?
They need to be able to, first of all, make a return. So the conditions should make it possible that when they have produce, they're able to hold the produce and sell it. To hold. Holding means to store properly and then to sell it, to convert it to money where they make a margin. But they should be able to store it at the right time. So that's not same as for plant. Post-harvest, what happens after you grow? You can get land, you can have a small place, you can do chicken, but when they're ready, the market. So whilst we know the global situation, if you even have a product, not even going out of Ghana, but if, for example, papaya, which is importing frozen chicken now, because the local demand is a challenge. Okay, but if papaya says, I need 10 containers of chicken a month. Okay, if people grow them, can they package them properly in the quantities? Even if it's a co-op, if a number of youth come together, put it together, package it properly, they have some cold storage, etc., and then moving on to reach the supplier. This structure, for me, I think it's very key. I like the idea of buffer stock, which was created by government. But I kept saying in conversations and in the last radio program that I had that I don't think that where we stopped as the buffer stock is enough. Now where we've reached, I think there's a bit of firefighting. We've seen government has said they're going to try and transport goods from the hinterlands, okay, to that. I don't think it's a bad suggestion, but you see, in terms of when that part is called distribution. So you bring it. Where are you selling it? Where are your retail outlets? This is common sales and marketing. And unfortunately, because we're firefighting, it's a bit of that. But you see, we have had these structures before, but we've gone back cycle. When they launched Operation Feed Yourself, then the government realized that people were producing. A lot of food was coming in. But where were they selling the food? Do we remember Ghana Food Distribution Corporation?
Absolutely.
So it is part of what buffer stock is doing is a bit similar, but they had a bit of exam because they had shops. Okay, they had shops. So when the private food producer, say assuming it's rice, when I'm bringing in rice, I want to also look at how much is Ghana Food Distribution selling a 5 kg bag of rice.
And that becomes a guide for you.
And that becomes a guide for me if I want to compete. So my product should either be better than that one, because people have an option of that. And somebody said, oh, but we have a free market economy. And I said, gentlemen, nowhere in this world, any country runs, when it comes to food security, nobody runs a free market economy. No country does.
This is Springboard, your virtual university. And Cecil Sunkwa-Mills is saying that when it comes to food security, no country runs a free market economy. We've been talking today about the life, the learnings, the journey of Cecil Sunkwa-Mills, who many of you know as the immediate past Managing Director of MultiChoice Ghana. He's also the President of GIBA, the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, and he runs his farm business, TNC Farms, that is into poultry. And Cecil has been helping us to appreciate how the various experiences of his childhood came together to shape his career. And I find it the thread very, very interesting. He's also been sharing with us how his time at MultiChoice brought together various experiences and learnings, and at every stage the consideration that was undergirding what he did. He's talked about GIBA and what they are responsible for, among other things, providing capacity building and a platform that aggregates all media houses so that they can advocate to ensure that their rights are preserved. But my interest has ultimately been in his farming venture and how that can be a platform for many other young people to also go out there and explore and pursue their agricultural dreams. Cecil, a big thank you to you for making time to be with us and to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Albert, for the opportunity.
Let's sign off by a word to people who are going through their own struggles as they try to navigate what is obviously a very tough time for many. What will be your closing thought for them in a minute?
Usually in tough times, what I say is that I do not necessarily focus on the negatives. Usually the negatives are a lot louder than the positives, and it makes you not see the options. What did they say? Oh, hear my dream. When there's a challenge, that is when you innovate. So there's always another option, and even if there's no option, I said look and listen to people who give you hope. Okay, when you have the negatives, it even drowns your creativity down. So whilst yes, we will talk about how things are going bad, inflation is going bad, you still look at in the current conditions, what are the outs? And you would find some outs, temporary outs for now. That's what we look out for.
So you think that if people focus less on the negative and look for points of inspiration, it would inspire their creativity?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Let's do this again.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
This has been Springboard, your virtual university in the engine room with Cecil Sunkwa-Mills. I trust the lessons have been beneficial to you. And to sign off, remember, in times of adversity, don't focus on the negatives. Find some inspiration from somewhere and it will inspire your creativity. Till we come your way again next week, my name is Albert Ocran, thanking you on behalf of Springboard Roadshow Foundation, MTN Pulse, the Enterprise Group, UMB Bank, Central University, and our media partners, the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Business. So we sign out by saying God bless you, and God bless you.